Right, hi friends, I'm Felicia. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be trying out a new thing. My gooseneck cell phone holder is wiggling. I should have stopped it before I started recording, but whatever. And the air conditioner is really loud, and things are just going really well over here. So I wanted to do my I'm not editing this video, I'm recording it on my phone. My life is a mess right now. Things are just bananas. My library is in disarray. It's empty. Everything's out of there. It's all in my kitchen. I'm in my kitchen right now, sitting at the table, and I'm looking at a disaster. This is like the only angle that it doesn't look like a disaster. So that's cool. So I wanted to do my Q3 wrap-up because I filmed my April wrap-up and my May wrap-up, and I did not edit them. Now it's time for June. So we're going to do a Q3 wrap-up, and this is going to be, I guess, like a live video, but I apparently can't go live from my phone, and my computer isn't set up, and it's just a big mess. So, how's your day going? My day's actually going well. Except we went for supper, and I tried ramen with miso, and I don't care for miso, apparently. So, my supper wasn't very good either. I'm sure it's good, I just didn't like it. I'm rambling for 2 minutes already. So let's start with my April wrap-up. I did participate in the Owls Readathon, and I completed all of the challenges, and I felt very accomplished with myself. The first book that I finished in April was not part of the Owls, because I finished it on April 1st, and that was Women of the Word by Jen Wilkin, and this is a Christian living book, I guess. And basically Jen Wilkin is a Bible teacher, and she takes you through her method of studying the Bible. And even though it's called Women of the Word, I would encourage men to read it as well. It has, like, the information is not women specific. So I thought it was really good. She's obviously very passionate about comprehending the Bible properly, and yeah, I thought it was very practical, and I really enjoyed that. So, the next book that I finished was not for the Owls Readathon either. That was a reread that I was almost done as well, and that was Red Rising by Pierce Brown. I listened to the audio narrated by Tim Jared Reynolds, and I thought he did a good job. It was well narrated, but I won't be continuing on in audio because there's lots of characters and I was getting confused, and if I can see the word, then that helps me. I'm a bit more visual like that, I guess. Like when people say things to me on the phone at work and I don't know what the word is, then I can't understand it. But if I have seen that word before, then I know. Like, sometimes business names are weird, like, for example. Anyways, so it's kind of like that. So if you haven't read Red Rising before, it's sci-fi set on Mars. To me, it feels like The Hunger Games meets Ender's Game meets Braveheart, kind of all smushed together, and I really liked it. It's more gory and cursy than I typically enjoy, but I really liked it. So I read that book a few years ago, and then I have reread it now because I want to continue on to books 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, so I need to catch up. So then the first book that I actually finished for the Owls was Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. That was for Muggle Studies, to read a book, contemporary book. And I also read that. That was the only thing I read during Dewey's 24-hour readathon on April 6th. And I really enjoyed it. It's definitely inspired by John Green's own experience with OCD. It's about a girl who's dealing with her OCD. I thought it would... The premise on the back of the book sounds like it'll be like a mystery heavy book, like she's trying to solve a mystery, but I would not say that's the focus of the book. It's definitely a plot point, but it's not the focus. The focus is more understanding her day-to-day life, and it was kind of hard to read. at some points, but I really liked it, so it was good. The next book that I read was My Squirrel Days by Ellie Kemper. I listened to that on audio, which was narrated by Ellie Kemper herself, and that was for the prompt to for Care of Magical Creatures, to read a book with an animal on the cover, and it has squirrel on the cover. I'm sorry I won't be inserting pictures because it's all on my phone today. We're going really low tech. But yeah, it was just about her life growing up and getting into her career as a writer and an actress, and The Office is like probably my favorite TV show, so I enjoyed hearing about her stories from on set and otherwise, and like she's so expressive and animated that it was fun to listen to anyways. The next book that I finished was Slow, Simple Living for a Frantic World, and that is by Brooke McAllery, and I listened to that on audio, and I think the narrator's name is Larissa Gallagher. I think. She's Australian anyways. That was for the prompt of herbology, read a book with plants on the cover. There was oranges on the cover. And it's basically kind of one of those slow living minimalism books, which I'm really into lately. I've been reading a lot of them. But honestly, I don't remember anything specific from this book at this point. Like, it wasn't memorable, but I enjoyed it when I read it. I would read it again in physical form, not audio, because ironically, I think I listened to it too fast. So I didn't really, I guess maybe that's why I didn't get that much out of it, but whatever. It was good, and I would read it again. And if you like books on minimalism, I would recommend it. The next book that I finished was Educated by Tara Westover, and that was for Charms, read an adult book. I listened to that I read half of it physically from the library, and then I had to bring it back, so then I listened to the rest of it on audio from Audible, and this is it's a very popular book, and it's about it's Tara Westover telling her own story of growing up in the backwoods of Idaho in a very conservative family, and I would go to say there's like not really religious conservative. Like, these people obviously don't have a healthy relationship with Jesus, and they got a lot of issues that they need to deal with, and it was really hard to read at sometimes because yeah, it was just hard to read. Her dad basically shunned modern medicine, schooling, public schooling, anything to do with the government. And they had a lot of bad things happen to them physically, and they did not go to doctors ever, and I really struggled with that. So part of me wonders how much of this story was sensationalized or even made up or whatever. But even if it's only like half true, it's still a really tremendous story. And I have recently heard people talking about this as a survival book, and like, I would not classify this as a survival book. Like, that's not the point of it. It's just about her crazy life. So yeah. Anyways, I hope that was explained all right. The next book that I finished was Because You Love to Hate Me, which is a collection of short stories, villain origin stories, and it came out a couple of years ago, and it was a collaboration between some popular young adult authors and booktubers. The booktubers giving them the prompts, and then the young adult authors writing the story. Hi, Storm! She's coming to eat. That was for Arithmancy, which was to read a book by multiple authors. And I finally got around to that. Like, I had bought it when it came out, and then I got the audiobook through Audible, and it was okay. I didn't like love the narrators, and I didn't love all of the stories. Like, these young adult short story collections never really do it for me. I think I prefer short story collections from like one author instead of like a bunch of authors. Although that is a good way to see authors that you may or may not like, because I did find a few authors that I would like to read some more from in the future. My favorite stories were Shirley and Jim by Susan Dennard, The Sea Witch by Marissa Meyer. Well, who's surprised that I love the Marissa Meyer story? Beautiful Venom by Cindy Pon, Indigo and Shade by April Genevieve Tuholk, and Sarah by Nicola Yoon. And the rest, they were really meh for me. So I'm glad I finally got that off of my Kindle TBR. The next book that I finished was Lady Susan by Jane Austen, and that was for History of Magic. Read a book that's at least 10 years old, so no problems there with the Jane Austen. And like, wow, sorry, like yellow and white much? Like, okay. Anyways. My table's kind of yellow, so I guess the light is reflecting off. Wow. Okay. So, I also listened to this on audio. I do not remember who the narrator was. I listened to it while I was coloring in my Quirkles coloring book, which is very fun. It's color by numbers, but circles. So you only have 5 colors, and then you color in the picture based on the numbers 1 to 5, and it's all circle shapes, and it makes a picture, and it's really cool. So, yeah, I had recently, before I read that, I had watched the movie Love and Friendship, which is not the same as Love and Friendship, Jane Austen's book, but it's actually based on Lady Susan. And I thought it was interesting because the main character, Lady Susan, she's more like the antagonist that we often get from Jane Austen. So not really her typical heroine, but she's more like a Mr. Collins or some kind of character like that, like really obnoxious. So yeah, it was very funny, but I actually liked the movie more. They added some stuff to the end that wasn't in the book, so, and I liked what it added to the story, so it was cool. The next book that I read was Reading People by Anne Bogle, and I listened to this on audio, narrated by Anne Bogle herself, and I don't like listening to Anne Bogle's voice. I don't think it's good for audiobooks, and sometimes I struggle with it on her podcast, but I guess that's different. I can handle it more. I didn't enjoy the audiobook experience, but I kind of was down to the wire, so I needed to finish it, or just wanted to finish it. And it's about different personality typing methods, and I really enjoyed that. She also had a chapter on highly sensitive people, which is not a personality type, but it's a trait, and I am an HSP. I'm a highly sensitive person, so I appreciated that chapter. I felt very seen, and it helped me understand that a bit more. And it's just like introductions to all of these different things, so it's not comprehensive by any means, but it helps you like kind of dip your toes in. So like she talks about the Myers-Briggs and the Enneagram, and like the really old ones where they were like phlegmatic. I can't remember the other ones, whatever. So I enjoyed the book. I would read it physically again. I would not listen to the audiobook again. And okay, the next book that I finished wasn't in Owls, but I had it on hold on Overdrive, or yeah, forever, and it finally came in, and that was the life-changing manga of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. And it was just literally like a fictional manga version of the TV show, and I really liked it, and I would definitely read it again for like tidying motivation, because I thought it was a lot of fun. The next book that I finished was Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. That was my 3rd time reading it, and absolutely loved it again. Like, I love this book more every time I read it. That was for the divination prompt, which was to read a book that takes place in the future. Station 11 takes place in the past, the present, and the future, and we follow different characters throughout those stories. And I love the story because it's one of those that you follow different timelines, and they kind of like weave together and then end up merging at the end, and I absolutely love books like that. So if you can think of other books that have that storytelling method done well, please let me know, because I absolutely love it. And I also love post-apocalyptic books. And my favorite thing about this book is that it's very quiet and it's more character focused. But to me, I feel like that situation is very well developed. Basically, there's a flu that I see Chris coming down the hall. I didn't tell him I was going to record. So there's a flu that I'm recording a video. I'm not editing it. So my yelling is going to be in here now. Awesome. Okay. Anyways, there's a flu that takes spreads over the world very quickly, and it takes basically kills off 99.9% of the population of the world. Because it spreads so fast, they don't even have time to find a cure, and yeah. So then basically the world is back to no technology, no electricity, like nothing that needs that. so like, and then we follow in the future a traveling symphony, and they perform Shakespeare plays as well as like having a little orchestra. And like they travel in a converted pickup truck that's pulled by horses. So I absolutely love that meshing of like our world with the past, way before all that. So I love this book. I love Emily St. John Mandel's writing. Absolutely love it. I want everyone in the world to read it. Except don't, because if you don't like it, then I don't want to know about it. I just want everyone to love it. So that's my feelings about Station 11. Then I read Descender, Tin Stars, which is volume 1 of the Descender series, by Jeff Lemire and art by Dustin Nguyen, and that's a graphic novel with beautiful art style. It's kind of like, it's either real watercolor or watercolor style digital, but it's beautiful, and it's basically set in the future where robots or androids have attacked, and then they thereby become illegal, and we're trying to figure out why this happened. And we follow a little android that was in hiding, and his name is Tim21, and he's adorable and precious. But this is not a graphic novel for children, because there is like some gory fighting and swearing and stuff. But I am very eager to continue on with the series. And I read that for, the prompt that I read that for was astronomy, which was to read a book with star in the title. The next book that I read was Jane by April Lindler. That was for Ancient Runes, to read a retelling, and that is a retelling of Jane Eyre. And it was interesting to see, because you don't see retellings of Jane Eyre ever. You see lots of Pride and Prejudice retellings, but never like Jane Eyre. And it was kind of interesting to see how she pictured that in a contemporary setting. There were some things that were just like really far-fetched, like that's not really how the world works, but it was quite faithful to the original, so I liked that. The next book that I read was For the Love of Letters by Samara O'Shea. That was for Transfiguration, to read a book with a red cover. And basically it's a reference on how to write different kinds of letters. So we have thank you letters, sympathy letters, letters of change, to like writing to politicians and stuff, writing love letters, and writing letters to like people that you don't like and telling them that you're mad at them. Yeah, it's really good. Like, I'm definitely going to refer to this in the future if I need to write like a letter to a politician or something. There is a section on writing erotic letters, so like, and there's examples. So just like be aware that this is not, at least that part's not suitable for young children, so don't use it as a tool to teach them how to write letters, at least with that part. But yeah, it was really good. Then the next one that I read was Miss Marvel Teenage Wasteland, Volume 9 by G. Willow Wilson, and that was for Potions, which was to read a sequel. So Volume 9, obviously. And to me, this one felt like wrap up of the story, because I then read volume 10 like a week or two later, and then that felt like kind of like just little bits that didn't really add to the story, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess the story was wrapped up already. So that's kind of where we were. But yeah, I thought the pacing was good in this one, and the conflict was engaging. And that, I think, is actually all that I read for Owls. Yeah, that's everything that I read in April. 20 minutes. Wow, how long is this video going to be? Also, is my phone going to die? We'll see. Okay, moving on to May. The first book that I read in May was Plus One by Elizabeth Fama. I listened to this on audio, but it was also one of the first books that I bought from Book Outlet that I hauled on my channel, and I didn't really like it. It's a sci-fi, or it's alternate history kind of, where people have been split into day people and night people because they found out it was more efficient to have people like living their lives all the time so they could do more things, because you know, half the world doesn't go to sleep overnight, they're working. But the story was just weird. I didn't like it. It was weird. And there was a plot point that I didn't like at all that had to do with babies getting switched in the hospital, which I do not like. Stresses me out. That's not a joke. And that was like the main conflict of the book. And like I think maybe 2 people read this book, so that's fine. I read Elizabeth Fama's other book, Monstrous Beauty, last year, and I liked that way more. This one was just weird, and I didn't like it. The next book that I read was P.S. I Love You by Cecilia Ahern. I listened to that on audio as well. I do not recall who the narrator was. Or for Plus One, I don't remember. Plus One might have been Julia Whelan. I listened to like 3 books narrated by Julia Whelan recently. Anyways, P.S. I Love You, you're probably familiar with that plot. It was a movie a few years ago with Hilary Swank and Gerard Butler. I liked how the book was different from the movie. I liked the book way more than the movie, actually. So, all is right in the world with Lady Susan and Love and Friendship. So, basically, Holly Kennedy is a young widow after her husband Jerry passes away in his early 30s, and he has left letters for her to open, one a month for almost a year, to help her through the grieving process. And yeah, so that's kind of the gist of it. I like the family aspect in this book. It was more prevalent than in the movie. The conflict with her friends isn't as dramatic, and I liked that the whole book was actually set in Ireland and that everyone was Irish. That was great. So I quite liked it. It was fun. Okay, the next book that I read was Sweet Bean Paste by Durian Tsukigawa, and that was just a short little book that I kind of picked up on a whim. I don't even know if I'd heard about it, but I just saw it on Scribd and I was like, sure, I'll read it. So it's basically about a man who is working in a dorayaki shop. I think that's what it's called. It's basically like pancakes with sweet bean paste in the middle, and it's like a treat. Yeah, so he's working in the shop. He doesn't like it, but he's kind of obligated to the owner to keep working there. He owes the owner a debt. So he's working there, and then he puts a sign in the window for an assistant, and this little lady comes in, and he doesn't really want to hire her because she's really old. But then she's like, I make the best sweet bean paste you've ever had, and then he tries it, and he's like, yes, you do. So he hires her to make the sweet bean paste, and just their relationship was so touching, and it kind of turned into something that I wasn't expecting towards the end, but I really loved it. It was just really sweet and heartfelt, and I would have loved the book. Like, the book was 160 pages, and I would have loved for it to have been a bit longer, because I really enjoyed the characters. The next book that I read was Wool, the graphic novel by Hugh Howey, and this is a graphic novel based on the first book in his Silo series, which is a post-apocalyptic series where we're following a society in a underground silo where they've been living for hundreds of years because the Earth is not inhabitable after an event. And so I read books 1 and 2 like 3 years ago, and then I was gonna read the final book, and I thought maybe I would read the graphic novel as a refresher, but then I ended up listening to the whole series from the beginning again. As far as the graphic novel goes, I didn't love the art style, but it worked for the story, so that was fine. But it was pretty faithful to the book, and it was fine. The next book that I finished was English Poems of the 20th Century, edited by Eli Mandel and Desmond Maxwell. This was a random book I got at the thrift store like 100 years ago. Chris picked it out for me to read for my summer TBR last year, which you may remember if you saw that. And it took me 10 months to finish it, and I didn't really care for it, and I don't really like modern poetry. I'm picky about it, so. And that was modern in the 60s. No, the 70s. So that's all I had to say about that. There was some good stuff and some not, so whatever. Then I read Miss Marvel Volume 10, Time and Again, and this was the last one written by G. Willow Wilson. She's moving on from Miss Marvel now, and yeah, just felt kind of random. I liked the previous volume much more, so yeah. The next book that I finished was The Nesting Place by McQuillan Smith. And this is just like kind of a fun book on how to approach home decorating in a very personable way, and like with stuff that you have. So not like making it fancy or perfect, but just making it yours. And I really liked her approach, and I enjoyed it. She has another book out now called Cozy Minimalist Home, and I feel like that's gonna be like quite a bit of a change from her previous book. I think that one was published like 5 years ago, and then this new one was just within this last year. So it'll be interesting to see how she's kind of changed, because her approach in her first book, The Nesting Place, that is definitely not what I would call minimalist. So I'm curious. I have it on hold at the library. We'll see if I have time to read it with all of the other books and things that I have going on right now. Okay, the next book that I listened to was The Wicked King by Holly Black, which is the second book in the Folk of the Air series, sequel to The Cruel Prince. I'm really surprised that I like these books, because they're fae stories, which I typically don't like. And then they're like kind of brutal. But like, I love them. Like, I can't anticipate anything that's gonna happen. It just happens, and then I'm like, whoa. And like, this ending once again was just sucked me in. So like, my jaw dropped at the end. I was very shooken. So like, I cannot wait for the last book to come out and see how this whole thing ends. Like, I can't wait. Okay, the next book. My lip is like all dry and crusty. It's nice. The next book that I read was The Test by Sylvain Nouvel, and I got it for my birthday. It's one of my birthday books, and I read it the day after my birthday. And it's just a short story or a novella about a man taking a British citizenship test, and it's kind of futuristic. I wouldn't call it sci-fi, but it's kind of futuristic because the test is I'm not telling you about it. Go into it blind. It's about a man taking a British citizenship test. That's all I'm going to tell you. I read I read it in one sitting. I was enthralled, and it was very interesting psychologically and sociologically. and I couldn't believe the end of that either. Let's just leave it at that. Okay. That was the last book I read in May. Now we're in June, half an hour into this video. If you're still watching, thank you. We'll see if you make it till the end. So first book that I read in June was Wool by Hugh Howey. I listened to that on audio, and it was narrated by Allison something. And she did a good job. I liked her narration. The book holds up well to a reread. I had forgotten a lot from reading it 3 years ago, so I'm glad I decided to reread it. So yeah, I'm glad that I read it. I enjoyed it. The next book that I read was Outer Order Inner Calm by Gretchen Rubin. Another book a la The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up and The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning. Basically, it's Gretchen Rubin's approach to decluttering and minimalism. It's much more pragmatic than Marie Kondo's method. She's like just lots of... she's a big advocate of finding your own way to do things, which the Marie Kondo method is like, do this my way, and this is more like, do things your way, but maybe try this. So I enjoyed it. It was a nice thing to read before bed, which is what I did. Yeah. So the next book that I read was Shift by Hugh Howey, and that was narrated by Tim Gerard Reynolds, and so that's the second book in the Silo series. And this one was like 100 pages too long. I was kind of bored, and it felt kind of repetitive. I just really wanted things to get wrapped up towards the end. But I am, again, glad that I read this because there was lots of things that I forgot. And if I had gone just to the last book, I would have been very lost. So I'm glad that I went back and read it. And then after finishing that, I immediately went to the last book, which is Dust. And I felt a little bit disappointed at the end because I felt like there's so many, and I don't really want to spoil it. It's a good series. You should read it. But like the ending that we got, I would have been okay with in a standalone, but these are not small books, and there's 3 of them. I added it up. It's over 1,600 pages. And so the ending that we got was not enough for me. It was a good ending, but I wanted more. I think things could have been wrapped up a bit more nicely. I felt like he was kind of exposing all of these layers, and then like they're just kind of like hanging out there still, and I was like, okay, but why this and why this and why this? And I felt like we were still getting reveals of things like too close to the end that were kind of contradictory to things at the beginning. Like, it was kind of weird, but it was a really good story, and for the most part his writing is really good. So I'm glad to see the end of it and know how everything ended. The next book that I finished was A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I'm a little bit thirsty, so we'll see how the words continue to come. So Little Princess, it's a classic, and I have read it before many years ago. Actually, not many years ago, like 8 years ago. I never read it as a kid, but I read it like 8 years ago. I actually liked... I like this actually more than The Secret Garden, which I read earlier this year as well. Yeah, and I liked the story. It's about a girl named Sarah who grew up in India. Her dad was in the military somehow, some kind of officer. And when she's like 7 years old, he brings her to England to go to school. And it's kind of about her life and how she's a little princess in her heart. And she's so sweet, and I love her, and this book is good. I liked it. And I wish that I knew where on earth that was, because the cover is the Puffin and Bloom, and it's gorgeous. Yeah, it's great. So, the next book that I read was Anne of Windy Poplars by Elle Montgomery. This is book 4 in the Anne of Green Gables series, And it's just basically, like, there's not really plot, it's just more Anne's experiences, day-to-day run-ins with these different people. And Anne truly is my favorite person in fiction ever, I think. So I just love her. And yeah, it was just great. Anne's living in Summerside for 3 years teaching at a school, while Gilbert is becoming a doctor. And yeah, it's great. I love Anne. Okay, so the last book that I finished in June was a reread of Wild Geese by Martha Ostenso. I'm the only person in the world that has read this, although my friend Erin has a copy, and I think I've talked about it enough that she will read it soon. This is written by I guess she's classified as a Manitoban Canadian author, but I think she ended up living in the States longer than she lived in Canada. She only lived in Canada as like a teenager into young adult and then back to the States. But this book is set in the 1920s in a rural farming community. And it follows, our main character is a teacher who goes to teach for the year. And the family that she stays with, the dad is horrific. He is a really manipulative, harsh man, but in an interesting way, kind of like not the stereotypical way. He's very quiet about it, but everyone's just afraid of him. And so the story is kind of about her being dropped into like this weird ecosystem of a family and how they behave around this man who's obviously horrible, and how the community behaves around him, but he has so much control, but like everyone keeps giving him control, so it's kind of like self-fulfilling. And it's kind of also follows his children and how like they're all becoming young adults, and they're like getting ideas of their own, and they want to live their own lives. And it's just interesting to see that dynamic and how they might get out of this life that they have no choice in. And yeah, it's just really interesting, and I think more people should read it. It's kind of dark at times. It's just kind of hard to read because this man is so just horrific. But yeah, and the writing is so atmospheric. Like, I can just picture everything. I just love it. And it's interesting because it's not a real town or community, but it's set in a very similar location to where a lot of my family lives, and like I've been there a lot, so I feel like I can visualize it really well. And yeah, it's just a really good book. I think people should read it. Good luck finding it, but whatever. So those are all of the books that I've read in the third quarter of the year. And this video will be 40 minutes long, so thank you for sticking to the end. If you made it, well done you. You are my friend. So, hopefully, okay. So now we're going to get into a little bit of a just ramble update. So if you're not just interested in books, then thanks for watching. But yeah, the reason that I haven't been posting is me and Chris. This is an itchy spot that doesn't want to go away. Me and Chris, we are working on like some serious updates to our house. We're replacing all of the flooring. Like, it has the kind of that vinyl, that laminate hardwood that like clicks together. But we live in a house trailer, and floor that clicks together is not smart because the house shifts. So we're starting to get like these big gaps in the floor. And so we're putting down this vinyl plank flooring that you glue down, so at least it won't shift when the house shifts because it's on the floor, right? So we're putting down fresh underlay, and then the vinyl plank flooring. And we have started with my office slash library. So everything is here in the kitchen. And I'll show you. Okay, well, like, that's kind of how my bookshelves look right now. Like, it's terrible. It's just terrifying. And, like, we can't eat at the table because it's full of my stuff. And the living room is full of my stuff. So it's just a really good time. So I painted it fresh. And we put down the flooring yesterday. And that took us all day. And that was tiring work. And so I think on Thursday, like, I don't know what day it is today. Yesterday was Canada Day. I don't know. Today's Tuesday, July 2nd. And, yeah, so we worked on that all day yesterday. And tomorrow we're going to put up back all of the trim and stuff. And then on Thursday, I can start moving my furniture back in and getting my books organized and everything. And then once that's done, then we'll empty out Chris's office and we'll do it all again. We're only painting those 2 rooms in the entrance, so at least the painting is not going to take forever. And then we're also replacing our exterior doors because they're old and starting to rot and they need to be done, so we're going to do it ourselves too. So, like, we're finding out differences in our personalities in that I want to do things correctly at first, and then eventually I start getting impatient. I'm like, okay, well, good enough. And I start approaching things like that, which is not ideal for a house situation. And I'm realizing this, so I'm going to just ignore that tendency. And Chris is very much methodical, and he's going to do it right, no matter how long it takes. So, and I'm like, hurry up. I just want to get this done and move on to something else. So we're learning that. I should probably know that about myself already, but, like, you know, in the different circumstances in your life. So that's kind of how things are going. So I haven't had time for filming videos because my house just, it scares me and I don't even want to be in it unless I'm actually making progress. But pretty soon I will have a room of solitude and it'll be nice. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much how things are. So yeah, let me know about, like, some of your reading plans for the summer or summer plans otherwise. My summer is going to be this renovation job. It's probably going to take us till September because if we just work on it on weekends, then it's going to be great. I have to go to the beach at least once. I don't think I went to the beach last year. I love being in water. I love the beach. Like, my dream would be to live in a forest by a lake. That would just be the best. That would be my dream spot. I would be in the water every day. I love swimming. I love being in water. Okay. Anyways, wow, we're rambling. So, thanks for watching this video. Tell me stuff. Anything you want to tell me. If you thought this video was boring and too long, well, don't tell me that because, whatever, it's my video and I can do it how I want. Thanks for watching. You're awesome. If you made it to the end, God bless you. Bless your little face and your heart. So, that's all that I have for today. I'm going to shut up and get some water. So, until next time, so long, and thanks for all the fish.